Assalamu alaikum students, this is your teacher Muhammad Umar Khatuk for the subject Project Management, and this is our 28th lecture and chapter number 11. And today the topic of our discussion is Project Control. Control is the last element in the implementation cycle of planning, monitoring, and controlling. Information is collected about system performance compared with the desired or planned level, and action taken if actual and desired performance differ enough that the controller manager wishes to decrease the difference. Note that the reporting performance, comparing the difference between desired and actual performance levels, and accounting for why such difference exists are all parts of the control process. In essence, control is the act of reducing the difference between plan and reality. Although this whole course is primarily directed to the exercise of control by the project manager, we must note that the project management office or other project overseer reporting to upper management also has project control function. The aim of the project is to help achieve some strategic objective of the organization. Thus, regular deliberation of the PMO, council, or group charged with implementing the project portfolio process must include an appraisal of the continuing value of the project in achieving those objectives. Using the information gained from monitoring the project as well as information concerning changes in the organizational goals, resources, and strategy, this group may need to take some form of action regarding the project, such as directing it, getting it back on track, or perhaps even terminating it. A special kind of control is exercised through risk management. The group responsible for risk management, be it PMO or a specific group devoted to the subject, may exert its action on the project, but also may act on the environment, the major source of risk for the project. As you will see, a great many of things can go wrong with project performance, cost, or schedule, are the result of uncertainty, and the lion's share of the uncertainty has its source in systems that lie outside the project, its environment. When feasible, the group may act on these outside systems to decrease or remove threats to the project, but most often they are beyond the group's influence. All that can be done is to act on the project in order to mitigate or counteract or enhance the actions of these external systems. In our opinion, far too little attention is given to risk identification and management. As been emphasized throughout this course, control is focused on three elements of a project: performance, cost, and time. The project manager is constantly concerned with these three aspects of the project. Is the project delivering what is promised to deliver or more? Is it making delivery at or below the promised cost? Is it making delivery at or below the promised time? It is strangely easy to lose sight of these fundamental targets, especially in large projects with a wealth of detail and a great number of sub-projects. Large projects develop their own momentum and tend to get out of hand, going their own way independent of the wishes of the project manager and the intent of the proposal. A few of the things that can cause a project to require the control of the performance, costs, or time. First, we talk about performance. Unexpected technical problems arise. Insurmountable technical difficulties are present. Quality or reliability problems occur. Client requires changes in system specification. Interfunctional complication and conflicts arise. Technological breakthroughs affect the project. Intra-team conflicts arise on interpretation of specifications or solutions to technical problems. Market changes increases or decreases the project's value. Cost. Technical difficulties require more resources, the scope of the work increases. Initial bids or estimates were too low, reporting was poor or untimely, budgeting was inadequate, corrective control was not exercised in time, input price changes occurred. Time. Technical difficulties took longer than planned to solve. Initial time estimates were optimistic. Task sequencing was incorrect. Required inputs of material, personnel, or equipments were unavailable when needed. Necessary preceding tasks were incomplete. Customer generated change orders required rework. Government regulations were altered. And these are only a few of the relatively mechanistic problems that can occur. Actually, there are no purely mechanistic problems on project. All problems have a human element too. For example, humans by action or inaction set in motion a chain of events that leads to a failure to budget adequately, creates quality problems, leads the project down a technical difficulty path, or fails to note a change in the government regulation. If by chance some of these or other things happen as a result of human action or not, humans are affected by them. Frustration, pleasure, determination, hopelessness, anger, and many other emotions arise during the course of a project. They affect the work on individuals who feel them, for better or for worse. It is over this welter of confusion, emotion, fallibility, and general cussedness that the project manager tries to exert control. All these problems, always indeterminate combinations of the human and mechanistic subsystems, call for intervention and control by the project manager. There are finite slips twixt cups and lip, especially in projects where technology or the deliverables are new and unfamiliar, and the project managers, like most managers, find control is difficult function to perform. There are several reasons why this is so. One of the main reasons is that project managers, again like most managers, do not discover problems. Managers discover what Russell once described as a mess. A mess is a general condition of a system. When viewed by a manager, leads to a statement that begins with a few curses and goes down from there. It is the discovery of a mess that leads to the project manager to the conclusion that there is problem lurking somewhere around. In system as complex as project, the task of defining the problem is formidable, and thus knowing what to control is not a simple task. Another reason control is difficult is because, in spite of almost universal need to blame some person for any trouble, it is often almost impossible to know if a problem resulted from human error or from the random application of the Murphy's Law. Project managers also find it tough to exercise control because the project team, even on large projects, is an in group. It is we, while outsiders are they. It is usually hard to criticize friends, to subject them to control. Further, many project managers see control as an ad hoc process. Each need to exercise control is seen as a unique event, rather than as one instance of an ongoing and recurring process. Witten offers the observation that projects are drifting out of control if the achievement of milestones is being threatened. He also offers some guidelines on how to solve this problem and bring the project back in control. Because control of the project is such a mixture of feelings and fact, of human and mechanism, of causation and random chance, we must approach the subject in an extremely orderly way. We start by examining the general purposes of control, then we consider the basic structure of the process of control. We do this by describing control theory in the form of cybernetic control loop. While most projects offer little opportunity for the actual application of cybernetic control loop and automatic feedback loops, this system provides us with a comprehensive but reasonably simple illustration of all elements described to control any system. From this model, we then turn to the types of control that are most often applied to projects. The design of the control system is discussed, as are the impacts that various types of control tend to have on human beings controlled. The specific requirement of balance in a control system is also covered, as are two special control problems: control of creative activities and control of change. All in all, it is our opinion that all the major tasks of project management, control is the least understood. Most project managers are ill at ease while in the role of exercising control. Many seem to associate the notion of disciplinarian with control. A few simple suggestions might help. Avoid heavily criticizing people for actions they know are wrong. A simple reminder will do. Avoid criticizing people in public under any circumstances. Recall from time to time that the people working for you are reasonably bright and almost never act out of malice, unless you have just violated the immediately preceding rule. Above all, remember that placing blame does not fix the problem. Fix first, blame later if you still have the energy and simply must. The fundamental purpose of control. The two fundamental objectives of control are the regulation of results through the alterations of activities, the stewardship of organizational assets. Most discussions of control functions are focused on regulation. The project manager needs to be equally attentive to both regulation and conservation. The project manager must guard the physical assets of the organization, its human resources, its financial resources. The process of conserving these different kinds of assets are different. Physical asset control. Physical asset control requires control of the use of physical assets. It is concerned with the asset maintenance, whether preventive or corrective. At issue also is the timing of maintenance or replacement as well as the quality of maintenance. Some years ago, a New England brewery purchased the abandoned and obsolete brewing plant of a newly defunct competitor. A project manager was put in charge of this old facility with the instruction that the plant should be completely worn out over the next 5-year period, but it should be fully operational in the meantime. This presented an interesting problem: the controlled deterioration of plant while at the same time maintaining as much of its productive capability as possible. Clearly, both objectives could not be achieved simultaneously, but the project manager met the spirit of the project quite well. Physical inventory, whether equipment or material, must also be controlled. It must be received, inspected, or certified, and possibly stored prior to use. Records of all incoming shipments must be carefully validated so that payments to suppliers can be authorized. With the exploding growth of outsourcing, even within projects, and the development of supply chains, both domestic as well as global, the difficulties of physical asset control have grown enormously. The proper design and operation of supply chains, known as supply chain management, is imperative to business as well as project success these days. The same precautions applied to goods from external supplier must also be applied to suppliers from inside the organization. Even such details as the project library, project coffee maker, project office furniture, and all other minor bits and pieces must be counted, maintained, and conserved. Human resources control. Stewardship of human resources requires controlling and maintaining the growth and development of people. Projects provide particularly fertile grounds for cultivating people. Because projects are unique, differing one from another in many ways, it is possible for people working on projects to gain a wide range of experience in a reasonably short time. Measurement of physical resources conservation is accomplished through the audit procedures. The measurement of human resources conservation is far more difficult. Such devices as employee appraisals, personnel performance indices, and screening methods for appointment, promotion, and retention are not particularly satisfactory devices for ensuring the conservation function is being properly handled. The accounting profession has worked for some years on the development of human resource accounting. While the effort has produced some interesting ideas, human resource accounting is not well accepted by the accounting profession. The fundamental purpose of control, financial resource control. Though accountants have not succeeded in developing acceptable methods for human resource accounting, their work on techniques for the conservation and regulation of financial resources has most certainly resulted in excellent tools for financial control. It is difficult to separate the control mechanism aimed at conservation of financial resources from those focused on regulating resources use. Most financial controls do both. Capital investment control works to conserve the organization's asset by insisting that certain conditions be met before capital can be expended, and those same conditions usually regulate the use of capital to achieve the organization's goal of high return on investment. The techniques of financial control, both conservation and regulation, are well known. They include current asset controls and project budgets as well as capital investment controls. These controls are exercised through a series of analysis and audits conducted by the accounting controller function for the most part. Representation of this function on the project team is mandatory. The structure of the techniques applied to the project does not differ appreciably from those applied to the general operation of the firm, but the context within which they are applied is quite different. One reason for the differences is that the project is accountable to an outsider, an external client, or another division of the parent firm, or both at the same time. The importance of proper conformance to both organizational and client control standards in financial practice and record keeping cannot be overemphasized. The parent organization, through its agent, the project manager, is responsible for the conservation and proper use of resources owned by the client or owned by the parent and charged to the client. Clients will insist on, and the courts will require the practice of, due diligence in the exercise of such responsibility. While some clients may not be aware of this responsibility on the part of the firms with whom they contract, the government is most certainly aware of it. In essence, due diligence requires that the organization proposing a project conduct a reasonable investigation, verification, and disclosure in language that is understandable of every material fact relevant to the firm's ability to conduct the project, and to omit nothing where such omissions might ethically mislead the client. It is not possible to define in general way precisely what might be required for any given project. The firm should, however, make sure that it has legal counsel competent to aid it in its meetings this responsibility. One final note on the conservationist role of the controller. The mindset of the conservationist is often anti-ethical to the mindset of the project manager, whose attention is focused on the use of resources rather than their conservation. The conservationist reminds one of the fabled librarians who is happiest when all the books are ordered neatly on the library shelf. The project manager, Often, the manager and the controller at one and the same time is subject to this conflict and has no choice but to live with it. The warring attitude must be merged and compromised as best they can for an excellent work on the role of the project and steward. This is the end of the lecture. Thank you.